miracle is something we think about when we think about how Jesus was present to us in the world. We think of Jesus as being a miracle worker. And for some of us, having faith is, among other things, having faith in the miraculous capacity of Jesus and the capacity of faith to evoke miracles for us. And yet, we might also have a sort of uncomfortable relationship with this idea of miracles. Do we really believe in these large, great miracles? Or do we sometimes encounter Scripture with a degree of skepticism and wonder? Maybe miracles made sense back then, but they don't make sense anymore. Did you know that the word miracle does not even exist in Greek biblical language? So in other words, never once does the word miracle appear in the New Testament in its original language. The term comes to us via the Latin. It's from miraculum, which is the Latin for an object of wonder. And if you've been listening to me at all for the last 4 years, you know I love the word wonder. Miracles are an object of wonder. And the root of this is the Latin word miror, which is to wonder at something, and then culum, which is how you turn a verb into a noun in the Latin language. So that's how we get to something which causes or evokes wonder in us. So a miracle, in the Latin understanding of the word, is simply something that causes us to wonder. As a side note, for those of you who love language, I didn't know this, but the word smile actually comes from the same Latin root. So maybe to wonder causes us to smile. So there's no Greek word for miracle. The word came to us as the church became more Latinized and the Latin language embedded itself in the English language. And so we get English language translations that use the word miracle, but it's not in there. So how is it that the word miracle does show up? Well, there are actually 4 words that the Greek original language uses that sometimes get translated into the word miracle. These 4 words are ergon, to work, teros, wonders, dumias, powers, and simeon, signs. 4 words. Sometimes each one of those words can get translated as miracle in the choice of the translators. Paul very often uses a combination of words, signs and wonders. In Mark's Gospel, where miracle shows up in English, it's usually the Greek word powers, but sometimes it's the Greek word signs. And in today's scripture, by the way, it never says a miracle happened at all. It just is the story. Mark's Gospel is packed full of these wonderful events, especially the first half of Mark's Gospel. One scholar did a little mathematics and found out that in the first half of Mark's Gospel, 47% of the stories are miracle stories. So clearly a lot of wonders are happening in Mark's telling. Here's one scholar's definition of a miracle. A miracle is a unique and extraordinary event, awakening wonder, wrought by a divine power, accomplishing some benevolent and practical work, and authenticating or signifying, as a sign, a messenger and his message as from God. Okay, that was a little complex. Let me try to make that a little simpler. Jesus, a miracle worker, performs these wonders that evoke wonder in us. They accomplish God's power on earth. They work for the good, and they are a sign of God's presence and God's desires. So the first work of wonder that we encounter in Mark's gospel today is one where Jesus confronts an evil spirit in someone and calls that spirit out of the person, so now that person is freed from the spirit and is considered again clean in the ancient Hebrew thought. And this activity of Jesus is a wonder to those who observe it, for up to that point they have experienced this one as possessed. It shows Jesus' power, and it certainly accomplishes something good for the person who has been possessed. And it tells us something about what God desires for us. In this case, the particular sign is to point out to us that Jesus is a certain kind of teacher. If you look back at this passage carefully, you will see that that is what this story is attempting to teach us. That a new kind of teacher, one with authority, has now come to God's people. The features of the story to pay attention to is that in temple belief, only God could cause healing. Rabbis only could declare healing that had already taken place. Also, those who are possessed by unclean spirits are unclean and can sully others, so you want to sort of stay away from them. But here Jesus encounters the one with an unclean spirit and is completely unconcerned about becoming sullied by that. Jesus evokes God's power to heal in a way that the rabbis were unable to do, and demonstrates God's desire to interrupt the suffering of that one and of the community around him. This story will set Jesus against those authorities of the temple right from the get-go. He is doing something which is an anathema to them. That in and of itself is a source of wonder to those who will observe. The entrance of the leper or the unclean, possessed one is a provocation, but Jesus does not even bother to comment on that provocation. He simply moves to take care of this, to clean, to liberate the one from that. The story is a wonder. Something able to evoke wonder in us. Miracles, by the way, are never really about the how it happened. We get stuck in that, but that's not the point of these stories. They're always intended to capture our imagination so that we will wonder about the why things happen. Why is it that this unclean spirit is exorcised from this ideas for this particular story. Exorcism is, above all, an event of liberating someone from something that has captured and held that individual. Jesus is demonstrating that the time has come for God's activity to be present in the world in a new and powerful way through this activity. And Jesus is shown to be authoritative, a big sign that we are supposed to pay attention to this Jesus in a particular way. Liberation, God's time has come, pay attention. Those are my few suggestions about the wonderments we might take to this story. But I leave this story to you and invite you to bring it with you into the week with a spirit of wonderment.